Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. That's PHAT. And if you're from the 90s, you know exactly what PHAT is. It's better than the FAT fat. I'm John Gorman, one of your hosts today. We got Lisa Franz in the house as always. Lisa, what's going on? How are you?
Hi, John. I'm doing very well. What about you?
Good, good. It's fall is starting to hopefully show its face. I know we'll talk to Devenee here in just a minute, but here in Missouri, it's finally like we had like 87s all this week, and then all of a sudden today it's like, oh, I might need to throw a little zip up on. So I'm looking forward to fall. How's the weather where you're at?
Bolivia is actually pretty warm. Today is a cold day with 71, but tomorrow it's predicted to be in the 85s, 90 again. So that's kind of our norm all year round, actually.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the fall, and that reminds me, over in a different part of the country. Welcome to the show, first of all, Devenee Schumacher. How are you?
I'm great, John. How you doing?
Good, good. How's the weather there where you're at? You're in Pittsburgh, correct? Still in Pittsburgh.
Correct. The business is in Pittsburgh. I live in Ohio, in a suburb right outside of Pennsylvania. So fall started today. It's pretty chilly and rainy out there. So we've got a few weeks. We have a frost coming here in the next few days, and then they say that an Indian summer is coming. So we're gonna have a couple weeks of some cool weather, and then a little bit of heat coming behind it.
Yeah, you all always get the cold stuff before we do because we're down here in Missouri. So I want to do a real quick introduction on my behalf, just on how I know you and why you're on the show, because to me, this is one of the most important podcasts I think that we can do. Most people know that I bought a small manufacturing plant and I manufacture fat muscle stuff and stuff for all a bunch of different coaches and gyms and things of that nature. But we're a small player and a young player. So to learn the things that I've learned over the years, I've studied people like Devenee and SDC, one of the best literally in the entire nation when it comes to manufacturing. So I first met Devenee in 2020 when we launched Fat Muscle Project, and I needed hormone optimizer built. And I did research everywhere, and it was like, man, you just don't know who to trust. And the number one name that kept popping up from insiders, because I was just using Google and I'm like, I don't know who's good or not. So insiders with other companies, and I won't name them, they were telling me SDC, go to SDC. So then I reached out and he built Hormone Optimizer for us. And the cool thing about that was, back then, and I don't know if it's still this way today, Devaney, but you guys were, I would coin it, the best manufacturing company for a small startup, right? And even though you have big companies that you work with, you were very friendly to work with a brand new startup and, very low minimums and made it affordable. And Hormone Optimizer has been our best product. So that was back in 2020. Is that still kind of the model that you guys have? You still work with a lot of people like Fat Muscles back in the day?
We do. It's what's nice about being an entrepreneur is you can still be nimble, even though you grow, and we're able to capture customers from startups to some of the largest brands out there and everything in between.
Yeah. So, from there, you've built the GDA for us, a multivitamin for us, numerous products. But then on the new ethics side, the other company that I'm an owner in, we're 7, 8 times the size of Fat Muscle, and you've built a ton of products since day
Mhm.
one. And the
Yeah.
biggest reason why we went with you is because, we post the COAs of every single product every time it's ran, and we post that on the website at that company. And, you've got the reputation of everything is always spot on. And we've always had such a good experience with you. So we've done a lot of business on that side with a lot larger company. But that's how I know you. If you would, just let everybody know a little bit more about you and what you do.
Sure. So I am one of the original founders and creators of the first all-natural gluten-free stevia brand that was launched to the market 17 years ago. That brand is called About Time. And proud to say that we launched that brand for women when back then the GNCs of the world were very, very male dominant. You would walk in, you'd see those large greasy abs or the big biceps on the labels, and you walked in the front door and you kind of got punched in the face with that stuff. And so there really wasn't wellness or gluten-free or any of that back then. And that time frame was 2008 is when I launched that brand. So but personally, so not only am I the founder of that business, but I am an executive chef. I am currently also a functional nutrition lifestyle practitioner. And so that education really helps me develop great products for people, especially condition specific. And it helps me with customer service when people are calling and asking questions, telling me about some of their symptoms or what they're going through, and I'm able to educate them and give them questions for their doctor to ask so they can be on a better track.
You fit right in on this podcast because that's what we do. We're not, I don't just own a supplement company. I've been a coach for 2 decades now. So like that's a big part of what we do. Same with Lisa, same thing. So I love that. To me, you're a trailblazer. I don't know of a lot of, we were talking about this before the show started. I don't know of a lot of female supplement company owners. You, Nellie Richardson's Pro Body Solutions back in the day, Stephanie Theobald, but you were a trailblazer. And then to be a female manufacturing company owner, I don't even know of another female. I'm sure somebody's out there, but you're someone that's been doing this now for a couple decades, right? So you've kind of paved the path for everyone, female or male. You get to see things through a different lens. So how has that been different for you? I know this isn't what we talked about in the show notes, but how's it different from you being on the female side to, experiencing being a trailblazer and a business owner?
Yeah, it's been enlightening and it's been educational. So, back in 2008, women really weren't in this industry. This was a male dominated industry, and a lot of people who spent way more time in the gym than they did anywhere else. And I had to become extremely confident very, very quickly, and that probably wasn't something that I was known for back then, or a lot of women. This whole strong woman concept wasn't done back then. And so I had to go into I had to take the time to understand my business, and I needed to understand the industry tenfold, and I needed to do it better than any man could do. And not to say between men and women, but I just needed that to build my confidence. So when I walked into a room, I was the smartest one in the room and I was confident in what I was saying. And that decision helped me personally know my business better. And when I did talk, people listened, and they gave me the opportunity. And those opportunities kept kind of spiraling and rolling over and over. And it's how our business grew. And so, I went from being a shy, meek type of woman to becoming confident. And then you had to go through the stages of where I had to become a shark for a while. And then I didn't quite like being a shark. So I kind of went back to just the confident, strong type of woman. And, but it's been very, very educational over the years to kind of see how this industry has grown, and how it's changed, and how many other women are in this industry as prominent figures within their companies.
I I'll venture out. Well, I know this is a fact. The rise of the amount of females that are in just the fitness industry in general. It's like you said, back in the day, you go into GNC, it was super bro. Like there was a lot of us meatheads, like that's just what it was. And females weren't as predominant as they are now. Now with social media and people like you that have kind of paved the way, there's a huge market out there, but we need females also because you can talk to someone like that about business or building something way better than I can because I'm a guy, even though I have a lot of female clients and I've done a lot of things over the years. How important do you think that's been over the last 20 years to kind of see this explosion of successful females?
Yeah, I think it's the key, and what I would tell you is men are very cut and dry, right? They don't allow emotions into a business, and where women are very emotional people. And I found that balance between giving, right? Giving my emotions to people, but not being feminine about it. You're not crying in a room, you're not tearing up, you're not doing things of that nature. But when you are confident and you're able to understand where your staff is coming from with the issues that they have, or where your customers are coming from, and you're able to have that empathy, so somewhat, it definitely works within the industry. So you're able to um, pivot and maneuver where you need to go from account to account to account, because everybody's different. We all need something a little bit different to make us happy.
Yeah. And before we get into this insanely massive business that you've built, I'm gonna nerd out. By the way, this podcast is for me. It's not even for our listeners, right? This is me selfishly wanting to bring you on so I can learn from you and get to know you better. You, as you've said before, you've lived an interesting life. You do live an interesting life. As a chef, you have cooked for some notable people. I know this through my research and listening to you on other podcasts. Who all have you cooked for?
Yeah, well, George Bush, Dick Cheney, many people on for Pittsburgh top tier sports like the NHL team, NFL team, NBA. Just some really interesting individuals. I went to school at Pennsylvania Culinary Institute when it used to be called that. And my school was right across the street from the Duquesne Club, which is downtown Pittsburgh, and they're the number one city club in the United States. And so I was a little older when I went to school, and so I graduated valedictorian, and the dean had asked me to go work across the street there. And I got to experience 9/11. I was the only employee that went to work on 9/11, and it was myself and Chef Kokenauer. And he was an amazing guy. I'm not, he was an amazing guy. So it was just the two of us that evening. And lots of really great experiences there. That is the ultimate fine dining place. You have to be a member to get in there, but it's just really an impressive facility.
Well, it's impressive to say that you've cooked for such notable people because very few people will ever have that chance to even meet those people, let alone cook and serve them. That's pretty cool. I'd love to go deeper into that, but we've got to get into the business. So, talking about time, and you had a supplement company before, right? And you were having that manufactured other places. What led you to get into the manufacturing side of the business?
Sure. The company started because I made the first line of real food meal replacement bars. Back then, it was just the extruded fake candy bar, looking like a Snickers bar type of thing. So
Yeah.
I created an entire line of cookies and cakes and stuff like that. I was using EAS protein out of Sam's Club. We then found we then said, hey, let's create our own, and found a manufacturer. We liked their samples. We moved forward with an order. And I started creating a cookie for another customer. And he was testing and testing and testing, and his macro nutrient profile was coming back wrong. The carbohydrates were really high. And so we found out, like, through testing, because we didn't know what third party testing was back then. GMP wasn't even a thing back then. And
Yeah.
and so we found out that our protein was 60% protein. It wasn't even an isolate, and our manufacturer was cutting our product with maltodextrin. So that's really what drove us to getting into manufacturing. So once we found that out, the first thing that we did was, we went to some friends of ours, and we had a group of angel investors, and they gave us the money to open up our first facility. And so Sean and I had to figure out how to manufacture, figure out how to flavor, right? Figure out how to flavor our brand that was already on the market, and do all of this while the facility was being built, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what really drove us into manufacturing. And so the first facility opened in March of 2011.
Okay.
Um, so we sold the brand for about a year, and that's when we found out about the ingredients a little after it was a year old. And then it took us about a year to learn the facility, build the facility, do all the steps. And so it was March of 2011 when that opened. That first facility was 5,000 square feet. We had three bays and a warehouse and a really small a really small office and a conference room. And so we were there from March of 2011 until September of 2014. It was just Sean and I. We were the only two employees, and so I'd wake up in the morning. I'd get to work around 6 o'clock. I was procurement, right? So I bought all my raw materials. I'd go put a blend in and I would do a blend while that was running. I'd come back out and I would do like some other work or anything that if I had label bottles or whatever. And then at lunchtime, I was a salesperson at lunch and I would sell our brand. And then after lunch, I'd go back in and Sean and I would fill all of our product, box our product, and then we would do whatever work needed to be done after that was done. So we hustled. My kids were, I think, 8 and 11 or 9 and 12, something like that around then. And they came in and helped us every moment that they could until we hired our first employee. And so in between, and I think our first employee was May of 2012. So
Okay.
Sean and I hustled for a long time. And so with doing that, my brand was still relatively new. And so we knew we had to start making products for other people. And
Yeah.
when we did, John, the first 39 of 40 customers, no one had a formula, no one owned their formula, and 39 of 40 was selling sugar.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
it's so bad. So bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them were small brands, some of them were medium-sized brands, but they were, relevant in the market. And so we had to flavor match all of those products, make them correct, and then tell the customer what their real price was, and then hope that they survived because, back then, I mean, when you're talking a $3, $4 unit price difference, that was pretty drastic back then. And so we quickly became known as the company who fixes problems, and we fixed a lot of them. And to this day we still fix them, and they're not nearly as prominent as they used to be, but we definitely still fix problems. Like I said, GMP wasn't a thing back then. It was just getting started, and the manufacturers who were around were pushing for it not to happen because it was a lot of money. And we opened our first facility GMP.
Yeah.
So, we've kind of been like that trailblazer from the beginning, and then launching a product that no one knew about, natural,
Yeah.
natural, stevia sweetened, gluten-free. I mean, none of that was anything. There were no gluten-free foods back in 2008. You had chocolate cake and rice bread if a Whole Foods market was near you. Other than that, you had nothing. So it's been an interesting ride, and we can talk about that. But it's been an interesting ride just with raw materials and the raw material market since we created that brand.
So there's some things here that stand out to me. So most of our listeners, Devaney, they're diet coaches. They're people like Lisa
Mhm.
and myself, right? And they're building a business, but they're super interested. Maybe someday they own their own supplement company, right?
Mhm.
But To me, here's the things that I extracted out of that. First of all, you did it yourself and the company was lean, like you and Sean, and you had your kiddos coming to help. I love that because my kids literally are out there working right now, shipping product behind this
Mhm.
wall in our new facility, a family business. I love that. But they got to learn and see the hustle from mom, right? The other thing that I picked up was not only running lean, um, word of mouth. So you said you quickly became known as the company that fixed things. So like when you did a good job for XYZ company, you fixed their problem, you got them a good product and they knew they could stand behind it. They're going to
Mhm.
tell other people. So like it's going to spread. And for our coaches listening, that's how you grow a personal training business. When you just go above and beyond and you become known for fixing things or getting high-end results, your people tell everyone for you. Like you don't have to go out and beat the drum. How big was word of mouth for you in that first couple years, Devenee?
It's still big, John. I mean, it's still big. It was tremendous for us. So, we had customers that were coming out of the woodwork. I mean, everyone I think was frightened at that point saying, "What am I selling? Is it too cheap? Is it too good to be true?" And it was sometimes overwhelming how many customers were coming to us.
How prevalent do you think that is today? You're I'm a newbie in the space, right? So like I'm not hearing the horror stories, but I stay in my own little ecosystem and bubble. And I know the way we do everything is spot on. Is this still happening at scale? Are these old companies that have been busted, are they just opening up under new companies and just continuing to stay in the system?
It still happens, but not nearly as much. And, we have, technological growth to thank for that. So think about Amazon and everything that they're doing with all of the additional testing and label claim review that they're doing. It's harder and harder for manufacturers to lie, cheat, and steal. CGMP, NSF audits, the customer has become more and more educated year after year after year since we started. And the smarter that the customer is, they ask questions. And whenever I talk to anyone new or anyone starting out, the first thing that I tell them is it doesn't matter to me if they choose my company or choose any other company. But if whoever you choose, if they tell you that anything's proprietary, I would run. If they don't answer the phone, I would run. If it's taking them too long to respond, I would run. And I tell everyone it's $125 when they send you your first product, your first run of product. I would send it to a third party lab and have it tested for macros or whatever you're selling for or some kind of analyte and see if your product is there. And then you kind of I know it sounds to be a little untrustworthy, but in the long run, the manufacturer's not at fault. The brand owner is. The brand owner is responsible for the label that they put on their product. So if your manufacturer doesn't make it to spec, you're at fault.
Yeah.
So, you're only protecting yourself for a really small amount of money.
Yeah, this day and age, that scares me so bad because, and that's why our stuff is so spot on. And I'm always so, that's why I only use places like we do most of our powders in house because I control that now and I know
Mhm.
everything's spot on. And when we test it, it's spot on. Or we use people like you, right? We use SDC for our larger stuff that we don't do a lot of pills. What scares me as a company owner is somebody testing my stuff and it comes back as wrong. Oh, they're going to blast it all over social media and everywhere, and you're done at that point. So, I mean, I just don't see why people don't. It doesn't cost that much to have third party testing done, but I'm glad to hear it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. With all the new things that are going on, it's not nearly as easy for someone to kind of get away with that stuff. And but there still are people out there, and a lot of times they prey on first time brand builders that they think that they don't know what they're doing, and they're going after a customer who maybe wants 250 units or 500 units of something, and that's what they go after. The people who aren't always legitimate, they go after the little guy who's trying to
Yeah.
build something. which is sad.
Yeah, yeah, and they're not educated yet,
I do
and
have
maybe
a I
they're
do have a
moving
small
hard.
question here when it comes to food labels, because I mean, let's say somebody does go through the trouble of third-party testing, etc. To my knowledge, there is still the possibility of a food label to be off by, is it 20-25% or something like that? Is that true? What they always say, because oftentimes when people eat a lot of processed things, I have heard that right, there is still room for error up to like 25% or so on those food labels.
Yeah, not so much. So so let's talk about that for a minute. So there is a rule with the FDA that says you're allowed to have some variance, and that variance can be plus or minus 10 to 20% either way. Manufacturers are not allowed to formulate to a variance. So if your product, let's pretend your product is 25 grams of protein and it's 2 pounds, you have to formulate and produce to that target. Now, when you're going through that fill line, it might waver here and it might waver here slightly, but you've got to dial your machine in to get that target. If
Mm.
so when people bring up and they say, oh, and that's why I say people should test their product. It's as simple as buying a $40 scale, opening up that capsule and weighing the powder inside. So yes, the problem that you're finding now, as John and I talked about, like it may not be people selling sugar, but there's a lot of manufacturers out there that are trying to tell customers that rule exists, and they're cutting product and they're cutting it by 20%. So that means your customers get 2 to 4 less scoops, or the pills don't have nearly as much active material in them. And that's the problem we see more than anything. And so and that leads to an issue, because there's a lot of formulas out there. When you go to make it the correct way, they don't fit in the 3 capsule serving or the 2 capsule serving. And then the customer is like, well, how do I explain this and how do I get it done right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually quite relieved to hear that as a consumer as well, that there's not just from the beginning on that huge room or margin of error, yet 10 to 20% is still something, but it's not quite as big as I thought.
Yeah, no, it's definitely there, but like I said, that's the new way for people to kind of skate away and make extra money if they do manufacture that way.
So let's go back to 2011 to 2013 ish. What was your revenue like? I'm always interested in that,
Yeah.
as a brand new company, because you had investors, and you were manufacturing about time. So you were making your own product, which I know is a huge advantage. I'm doing the same thing.
Mm.
But what was your revenue like those first couple of years, and when did you start to turn a profit?
Yep. So I want to say 2011, we might have been around 1.2 million. And we doubled
Wow.
we doubled every year, John. We were on a trajectory like this, like it just was going uphill. We doubled sales every year for a long time. We got to about, and I'm going to say 2016, we might have leveled out for a few years, 2016, 17, 18, and we were stuck around 26 million for a few years.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we were nonstop. Like it was, when I tell you, we were, sometimes overwhelmed with customers coming in.
Yeah.
We had a crazy ride. And on top of it, we were really selling our brand, and it really wasn't. I mean, we were bringing manufacturing clients in to keep the lights on and pay the bills, but it was really, we were trying to push our brand. And so yeah, so we hung out around 26 million for a few years, 3 4 years. And we were stagnant. We were still losing money. There wasn't EBITDA at that point. We were still trying to figure things out, like a lot of other companies. And then when we got a little closer, at that point, 2017, 2018 is when we started going after international business. which is an amazing business if you do it right. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of when some like life-changing type of things happened. Or not, I wouldn't say life-changing, but that's where some bigger players came in, and so 2018, 2019, and then we had the pandemic hit. And so the pandemic, our business exploded. And so, we were required to stay open. Obviously, we work for the Food and Drug Administration, and we couldn't make enough vitamin C, and we couldn't make enough zinc, and so between international and the pandemic, it really exploded. And so with the pandemic, obviously we met more and more companies and more customers, and because everybody was looking for certain items back there, so it just broadened our customer base. And then in 2022, we landed a monster account. What I would tell anybody is, you only want one or two monster accounts. The companies who are out there bragging like who they make for, and they have all these large accounts, I would run from those people.
Yep.
I wouldn't want them to manufacture for me, because those accounts are a lot of volume and a lot of your line time, for usually very little margins. Volume is the game there. And, a successful company will tell you one or two of those are good to have, and you need to fill it in with that small and medium accounts.
Yeah. So that was one of the next questions that I had. Well, first of all, I want to go back to revenue. You said you were still losing money, making up to 26 million gross,
Mhm.
bringing in 26 million a year. When did you start to, and I assume you guys were taking the money and you're putting it right back into the business, right?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, from day one, a little thing that I'll tell you about Sean and I, we were hustlers. We would go to every trade show, and we would walk, and his comment mead was, Dev, if something happens to me, you get half of whatever's in my right pocket. And so because we would go, because back then that's when you sold at shows, and all the things. And so he's like, yeah, you get half of whatever's in my right pocket. So but yeah, but yeah, so every penny that we made went directly back into the company. It was just always what we did. Our goal was to create a brand, build a brand, and sell a brand. And it ended up being create a brand and build a brand. And then it was, we pivoted, and then we had to decide if we wanted to continue to sell the brand or not. And so, with me saying we were losing money, and not really any EBITDA, the marketing costs back then, like to just keep up with the algorithms and everything else, it's atrocious, right? And we were one of the first to use ambassadors back then, and had affiliate codes. I mean, none of this stuff was around. And like sometimes I can say, this is common knowledge for people now when they open brands, and they're like, oh, we're going to have brand ambassadors or affiliates, and we've got promo codes, and we can do discount. None of this stuff was around back then. We had to create it all. I mean, Wheaties had like sports guys on the cereal boxes, but there was none of this kind of stuff when we started. So it's been a really cool ride in this industry, creating it and building it, watching it grow, and seeing where we are. But yeah, so with that, I would say, John, probably 2018, 2019 is when we started really making money, and EBITDA started rising, and things of that nature. I'm going to say right around that time, 2018. And and it's been kind of going up since. And so that climb is a little bit slower now than it was in the beginning, right? So because you're still maneuvering and building and creating as you go. Last year we did about 52 million.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Which leads me to talk about a few more things, right? Um, you were in a 5,000 square foot facility. From there, what facility did you go to next after 5,000 square feet?
Yep. So October of 2014, we started producing over by the airport in Pittsburgh, and so that facility was a 60,000 square foot facility, and so we had more room, we had more space, and honestly, we grew we grew out of that pretty quickly. We ended up, I want to say, what year is this? 25. I want to say in 2021 or 2022, 20, maybe even earlier, we ended up taking the building across the street as well. And so we had about 130,000 square feet altogether. And so it took us about 6 years to kind of grow out of that space. We took the building across the street. We moved the corporate offices over there in our shipping department. So it just became inefficient where we what we've done. And so 2022, we decided like we need to take the next steps, and where are we going to go? Where are we going to move the facility to get it all under one roof? Because you can you've got to max out where you are before you should just move. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so we literally are still sort of moving into the new facility. So now we've got 140,000 square foot all under one roof, massive ceiling height. It's like over like 35 feet and higher in some spots in the new facility. So, and that's got some pretty cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm super happy for you guys. I know I've got some stuff in production now that you guys are finishing up. You really haven't missed a beat. Like you emailed all of us and you let us know, hey, we're moving facilities. We're going to be, in there, I think September, October. You guys kept us in the loop and you also invited some of us out to check the place out. I really want to drive there so bad and see it. I'm just so
Yeah.
busy. But yeah, so that's your wow, 140,000 square feet. And that leads me to ask some other questions. One is what you do differently than other companies that help you stand out. But I want to ask another question. Do you guys do any kind of like 3PL work that I don't know this? Any
Mhm.
kind of 3PL work? Like, do you store product for people and ship out if they have online stores or anything like that? I've started to do that on my end, and it's become a big part of our business. So we make the products for. I've got a lot of coaches like me and gyms, right? So we make the products for them, but I also store it here and ship it for them. So like we kind of taken the distribution side. Do you guys do any of that at all?
We don't. So we've had one brand we've been doing a pilot with for about a year just to kind of test the waters and see what happens. We ship to their gyms. And then the gym is ultimately the person who sells to the end user. The reason why we don't do 3PL is because not every customer does potency testing, and not every customer does stability testing. And so when you are the distributor to the end user, you're required to have proof that it's been potency tested, that label meets the claim of what it states. And
Yeah.
so that's why Amazon is doing what they're doing. They
Yeah.
got in trouble. They got in trouble a handful of years back, and they learned their lesson the hard way. But it's why we don't do it. If we may build a program out where we will ship to a wholesaler, because the wholesaler is ultimately the distribution agent there.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
What are some things that you do that helps you stand out? Maybe some advantages or just things that you do because you know it's the right things to do. But what are those things that you do that make SDC different?
Sure. Yeah. So, when we meet customers and we get samples of their products in, first and foremost, we're putting that through a battery of tests. weeks, right? We're making sure the weight is what the weight is. We might even send the product out for testing, and we're kind of going through there just to say, okay, this is why we think you're getting the cost that you're getting. And, so we kind of look at it that way. But, there's nothing super special about the facility itself. That makes people want to come to us. It's really more the people and how we interact, right? So it's really communication, accessibility, speed. Those are the things that we offer that a lot of companies don't do. When people email us, we're very attentive and responsive. We give people the information that they need. If someone says, "Hey, can we come out?" I'm like, "Sure." Was tomorrow good? And we don't have anything to hide. And then secondarily, and I'm probably going to take this for myself as a kudos to me. I created the wheel, right, for what we do. And so I really feel like brands that come to the market shouldn't have to do that. So I give them as much information as I possibly can. And so
Yeah.
anything to help them not miss a beat, or not make mistakes, I try to offer to them, because I want them to be successful faster than we were. Because if you go down that same path we went, it's why it takes so long to make money, because we were figuring it out and doing all the things. And anything that I can offer to a new client to help boost them ahead, I do. And it seems to work for me. And it's just coming from a genuine place. I don't do it as a sales pitch or anything of that, but I do genuinely, care that people can be successful.
Yeah, and I'll personally vouch for that because this is the first time we've ever spoke like this. We spoke on the phone a few times, but you're someone that's bringing in, your company's bringing in $52 million a year, and you still take the time. I had an order of hormone optimizer just a couple of years ago. We were selling through it a little too fast, and I thought, and I'm this anal person that I will get in my truck and I will come pick a couple pallets up because I don't want to be out even for 2 or 3 days. I thought I'm gonna drive all the way to Pittsburgh, and I asked you, hey, can I come pick this up? And you said, yeah. Do you want me to? I'll drive into town. I'll give you a tour. Like you just offered to do that, and I'm just John Gordon, this little, this tiny little company on your radar. But you did that for me. So to me, you stay in the trenches. You're always trying to give back. You've offered me some advice on the manufacturing side. And a lot of times people will see that and they think, well, this young guy is growing these businesses and he's growing really fast. Like this guy could take some of my business. But you didn't look at it that way. You're like, how can I help John avoid some of these mistakes that I've made before? So I think when that comes from a genuine place, people stay with you longer. I think that builds loyalty, even though that's not why you're doing it. And that's to me one of the reasons why you guys succeed.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I can absolutely see now why you, John, resonate so much with Devenee and why you wanted to have her on the show, because obviously those are some values that you two really share in the sense of speeding or speedy response to your customers and being attentive and just really coming from a genuine place of service. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. I do have a question for you, Devenee, when it comes to that speedy growth of the company as well. I'm curious on more of a personal level, and was it ever hard for you to delegate, to let go of control, to, like all those things where you're like, this is my baby, I brought this up, and these people don't care quite as much as I do.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I don't sugarcoat anything, and I'm pretty blunt with people. So, we built a brand to grow a brand to sell a brand, and that was the purpose from day one. So we always knew that we were going to sell this company one day, and so I never really looked at it as like my baby.
Right.
But yeah, when you're doing everything on your own, and you bring someone new on, and it's kind of like it's difficult. It's difficult. You're wanting to delegate because you're so overwhelmed, or just you do a lot. But then when they don't do it with as much intention as you do, And that's part of the learning, right? That's part of the learning I had to go through to say it's okay. No one's going to do anything like we the owners are going to do it, and no one in this world is ever going to find the amount of people that they need to have the same care. And what I have learned is when you do find those gems, right? You need to pay them and you need
Yeah.
to give them great benefits, because all people really care about is their schedule and their paycheck. And if you don't pay them to keep them or keep them engaged, and if you don't get to learn who your employees are to find out what makes them stay engaged with your company, and like, you're going to lose them. They'll get bored and then they will eventually go somewhere else. But yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve to kind of get to that place of, hey, I've got to give this up and do. So, we created, 120 brand new jobs for the city of Pittsburgh. We're still old school manufacturing, and we give a lot of people an opportunity to bring home a good paycheck and feed their families, when they don't really have a skill set. And unfortunately, it seems to be more and more people with, not as much skill set out there. And it's either college is too expensive or they don't know where to begin. We are very, very diverse in our company, so we give a lot of different types of people jobs. And it's been very, very rewarding to, just to see individuals, work as hard as they do and to do all that they can. And it's, when they have their holidays that come up, we give them their time off for their holidays because they may be different than ours, and vice versa. They'll come to work and help us work while we're on our holidays. And it's really been a beautiful relationship for a lot of years with the staff that we've had.
Wonderful.
We've only got a couple more questions,
Sure.
and we want to try and keep this within an hour. We're all busy, and we know you have to get back to do stuff. What are maybe one, two, three, you think about it, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've learned from personally as a business owner?
Yeah, moving too quickly is probably what I would say would be the first one. Growing is great. I had to learn to sit back and think for a minute. You don't always have to answer right away. And, the advice I would give anybody in a personal relationship, a work relationship, thinking about, your business in any kind of way, you can put this to anything you want in your life at any age. Keep your mouth closed and think for a minute. That's it. Ponder on the questions, really take the questions in, and give a well thought out answer, because your answer might be different an hour from now than it was if you would have instantly spoke. So
Yeah.
take the time. Yeah, moving too quickly, really probably would be my number one mistake. And secondly, I would say, systems and processes. Um, you know, did when I started this company, did I say, "Hey, I'm going to grow a $50 million company with the $500 I started it with?" Because that's what it was. I started with $500. I mean, I had no marketing money, no anything. It was $500. No, and but what I would say is, as your business, if you see that rapid growth, ERP, CRMs, they really do play a pivotal role so that your future staff can excel faster and your business can grow faster. Those are secondarily investments that I would tell you to make sure you research the right one and invest in your company, because sometimes they can be expensive. But they definitely will save you time and money in the long run.
Yeah, interesting. Very, very good stuff. One more thing, and then we'll talk about supply side global, where we're both going to be. What's next? What's next for you? What's next for SDC? Obviously, you're in the middle of finishing this move, but what's next?
Yeah, so so the new facility is pretty fantastic. This one's gravity fed, so rather than old school, shoveling. So with the facility, we will eventually be putting stick packs in. So we'll have a stick pack service, probably 2026, either Q2 or Q3. So that will be new for us. And then just our continued business. We've got a couple cool new programs that I can't talk about too much here, but we got a couple new programs for startups that are coming out. So to help them, build their businesses faster. And then for me personally, I probably will be delegating more and more of my work out, as Lisa asked, and kind of taking a step back quite a bit, and really focusing on being a practitioner. I think I'm going to open up my own clinic and really help people functionally. I do a lot of functional testing, so like hair mineralization, GI mapping, blood work, things like that. So people can figure out their issues at the root cause rather than trying to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, that's definitely something. If you ever want to talk about that, I own Premier Utelemed with a couple partners, and that's been one of the best things that I've done because all of our people need that, right? So I think that's a fantastic addition. But it ties into this whole ecosystem, that you have. And by the way, stick packs, I've got people to send your way because I get asked that all the time, and I have to turn people away because we don't do that in-house.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be doing that, I'm going to we've got a couple companies here in my town actually trying to get me to go in house with them on stick pack machine. I'm like, listen, we've got this other stuff we're trying to do and grow. I'm just going to send them to you. So look for that email. I'll
Great.
glad to
Absolutely.
send them to a great place. So, and then finally, Supply Side Global, that you are hosting a kickoff party there on Wednesday, the very last Wednesday. I'll be there. Leslie's going to go with us. She's starting to experience this side of the business. And it's my first time there. And you're one of the big players there. You're having a kickoff party. How important is it for people to go to things like these trade shows and these expos if they're in the supplement industry?
It can be. So, what I would tell you is depending on what part of the industry you're in, certain shows make more sense than others. What I like about Supply Side West is it's kind of becoming like where the cool kids go to hang out and have a good time. It's really about raw materials, but um, the people who are meeting there now, the brands who are going to look for inspiration, they're able to meet new people. It's kind of like speed dating for the supplement industry. And it's just really becoming like the cool place to go, because it was really just so ingredient focused years ago and boring. And now it's a really, really interesting place. So but shows in general, you've got to utilize them at the time that you can to make your company successful, and then you've got to monitor it, because when you're not making money from those shows, you need to stop going, or you need to stop for a few years and pivot, because they can suck a lot of money out of the budget, if you're not really paying attention. You don't always have to be that visible every year. There's a lot of other ways to do things where you don't need to do some of the shows every year.
Yeah, I looked at it and this thing's massive. It's almost overwhelming for me. And I'm going as a small manufacturing company, mostly powders, to find, other packaging companies so I can compare prices. And if I can save, 25 cents on a 1 gallon black tub, I want to be able to find those kinds of connections instead of just using Google and emailing people and talking to, like, that's what I'm going to try and do is,
Yeah.
I've built companies to where I can find different pricing on stuff and build up my bottom line. And that's really what I'm looking to go do. But this thing's, holy crap, it's massive. Like,
Yeah.
how long have you been going?
Well, we've been going for quite a few years. I don't go every year, but what you need to become friends with my guy and in my procurement team. So I'll connect you and Pete together. and
Oh,
you
thank
guys can
you.
become besties. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and he'll gladly be able to give you a hand there. But you're exactly right. If you can save like nickels add up, right?
Yeah.
So what I would tell people is when they're trying to find money to get their margins up, they need to look internally. Where are you spending money? Where does it really need to be spent? Can you order a little bit more volume to save a nickel here, a dime there? Because when you take that and you add all those nickels up across however many units you're selling, it's real money.
Yeah, 100%. This has been such a fun episode. I could do two or three more of these with you, and maybe we'll have you on it at another point and we'll talk about some of the other ventures that you have going on. But, for our listeners, if you ever want to get a hold of Devenee or SDC, all you have to do is just check our show notes out. We have all of our contact information, SDC's contact information. Again, I vouch for them. I highly recommend them as a manufacturer. So check them out. And for myself, Devenee and Lisa, this has been fun. We're out of here. See you guys.
See ya. Thanks so much for having me.